Hey everybody, Devout Nation here again, doing something a little different. I'm going to do some reaction content, and for the first one, I want to highlight a clip between Cliff and how he is confronted pretty aggressively in the beginning about contradictions in the Bible, and then another man comes on and starts talking to him how religion is just a form of government and brainwashing. So I'm going to watch the clip, and then I might pause it, give my thoughts on things, and give my thoughts throughout. So let's get started.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
You said the first thing about taking a book as a proof for your belief. You said no internal contradictions. How well do you know this book? I got this from your friend the other day. It's the Bible for all of you who don't know. I don't know which version it is. I don't know who's writing, who decided what to put it in here. John, we'll read John 1:17, 18. Do you know this one? I'll read what it says here. It says, no one has ever seen God, but God is the one and only who is at the Father's side has made him known. Right here, it says, no one has ever seen God, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You believe that? You take that? You want to read it? That's your book. This is what you take.
You bet.
Right here, same chapter, John 5:19.
Right?
Jesus, it says here, Jesus gave them this answer. I tell you the truth, the Son can do nothing by himself. He can do only what he sees his Father doing. No one sees, he only does what he sees. Internal contradiction.
So right away, she comes off in a very aggressive manner. I don't think when anybody's debating worldviews or religious topics or even politics, you have to show some respect for the other person. Since it's such a topic that people have such passion for, and there's no 1000% clear answer, I think if you're going to have a discussion, you shouldn't come in with such hostility like this woman is. And then to touch on what she's saying that it says nobody sees God, and then Jesus sees God. Well, she doesn't seem to understand that God and Jesus are one person. And it doesn't look like she's well versed in the Bible to understand the Holy Trinity. And right away, like anybody who has a basic understanding of the Bible would understand that Jesus and God are one. There's many Bible verses where he says he and the Father are one. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. So right away, her argument is meaningless if you knew anything about the Bible. Let's continue.
So then this book has internal contradictions. Can we agree on that? Oh, you don't say yes or no answers. What do you say about this internal contradiction?
One of the basic principles of interpreting any book is you have to read in context. And obviously, when you read John chapter 1, the main point is Jesus is God in human form. He begins. Ma'am, am I allowed to answer you or not?
But you're not making sense. You say the same
well,
thing
then why are you wasting your time standing here talking to me if I'm not making sense?
Because look at all these people here who have questions.
Fine, then why don't you let me go on to other people? If I don't make sense, ma'am, why do you waste your time?
Why am I going to let you misguide them with your misguidance?
Oh, I see. So you have to sort of be a parasite who comes in here and just feeds off the people who are listening to me talk?
Absolutely, why not? You've already made a fool of yourself here anyways.
Why, that's pretty sad. Why can't you just be open and honest and have an honest dialogue?
Let me explain this.
Yep, okay.
Explain this.
Thank you.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever seen Cliff get that upset in any of the highlight videos I've seen with him. He's usually very calm and doesn't say things like you're a parasite and stuff. So it's interesting because she definitely struck a nerve with him. And I think it's because, like I said before, that when you come with such hostility, it doesn't cater to a healthy discussion about the matter. It puts everybody on edge, and both parties are now not discussing their contradictions or differences in views. They're now in like prove mode, and it got very hostile. And that's something I wanted to point out. If you watch Cliff's videos, he usually never reacts in this way. And like I said, I believe the woman coming with such hostility just set the tone, and that's just not a healthy way to debate. But let's continue.
John chapter 1. John begins with the words, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. crystal clearly. John 1:1 is stating the deity of Christ. The word there is Christ. The Greek word is logos. Obviously, by reading John 1, you know he's talking about Christ. Obviously, he's hearkening right back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, which says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. John is taking that and putting it in Greek. John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Nobody has seen God. I haven't seen God. You haven't seen God. But the claim of John is, and the claim of Jesus is, that he is God, revealing himself in human form. That's clearly, unmistakably what John 1 is teaching. And you don't have to have a PhD in New Testament. Just read it yourself, and you'll figure that out.
It's both John. I didn't flip to even a different chapter. It's 2 pages away. Both John saying, one saying no one sees God, the other one saying Jesus sees God. Is it saying Jesus sees himself? Is this something that everyone who reads this Bible
exactly right. Jesus is claiming to be God, revealing himself in human form. That's his claim.
And he sees himself.
No, you're
Why
not
would
God.
John write that?
You're not God. What's the difference? Well, if you die and rise from the dead, I will listen very closely to everything you have to say.
Why is that the one thing that you take? Why
Did you see George Washington inaugurated first president of the United States?
Other people did. I trust that.
Good, and other people saw Christ die on a cross, and they saw him risen from the dead.
But they have internal contradictions.
No, there's no contradiction there. We human beings do not see God, but when God chose to become a human being in Jesus Christ, obviously Jesus knew the Father very, very intimately, very, very well.
Raised a Catholic, and I think Jesus was a fantastic man that everybody should learn about his life.
How did you find out about Jesus?
I was taught.
By whom?
Through going to church and my family.
So why did you trust a priest in a Catholic church and your family to tell you the accurate truth about Jesus?
Really, because religion perpetuates brainwashing. That's the only way to say it. When you take a child and you teach them from day one that they have to go to church once a week, and it's just like learning a language. If you ask me to speak Chinese right now, I'm not going to be able to do it. But if I grew up in China, it would be second nature to me. Religion, think about baptism, okay? What is baptism? Why is it so important? Why was the idea that baptism is everything so perpetuated? You know what baptism is? You are making the choice for a child that can't even make up its mind yet. You see? You've already indoctrinated them into a belief system.
Where does Jesus talk about infant baptism? Where does Paul or Peter or James talk about infant baptism?
How about John?
Where does anywhere in the Bible is infant baptism talked about? So I agree with you. You see, sir, we agree. Infant baptism is found nowhere in the Bible.
That's a great point by Cliff. And I just want to go back to what this guy originally stated, that he's saying that anybody brought up with religion's brainwashed into believing religion. Most atheists that I know were brought up religious and became atheist. So, and I don't think I know one person whose parents were atheist and raised them to be atheist and they were atheist. It's always been people who were growing up as a Christian or whatever other religion they were brought up by, and they chose themselves to be atheists. So this idea that religion is brainwashing children into believing for the rest of their lives with having no free will to decide what they believe in is kind of a silly claim, and I think it insults the intelligence of just people overall that they can't make their own decisions if they're brought up a certain way. I think it can have an effect on somebody, but once you start developing your brain and thinking for yourself, you're going to do your own research, you're going to make up your own mind about things. That goes across the board, or else we would just be mirror images of our parents. So that point makes no sense. And then I love the fact that Cliff called this guy out about the infant baptism, and there's no evidence in the Bible, 0 verses that claim that you should baptize an infant. But let's continue.
Okay.
So my question remains on the table, sir. What is your source of information about Jesus? Why did you trust that source? Be it the Catholic priest, be it your mom and dad?
Okay, fine. Yes.
What if we say
because I was
Muhammad?
raised since this big to know and taught. That's why you trusted.
Okay? I had to be a skeptic. I was not going to trust mom and dad and the local priest or minister to tell me the truth about Jesus. I have to go to the eyewitness testimonies.
Okay.
Which have been
That's a
changed
whole-
That's
since
right,
they
sir.
were written.
I am
That's a
not
whole
going to
other
build
debate.
my life on what mom and dad tell me.
That's a whole other debate because the Bible
You
has
have
been
to
rewritten
think
about
things
4
through
times.
yourself.
All right. Well, you just mentioned to me that the Bible has been rewritten many times, and pieces of it have been excluded and are still being found right now. And so what you're saying is that your first-hand source that you're talking about has been used. King James rewrote the Bible for a reason. Okay. And before our political systems were able to control the masses, religion controlled the masses. Religion was government.
All right. King James in the early 1600s did not translate the Hebrew Old Testament or the Greek New Testament. He didn't know the languages.
I'm not saying he did it himself. He was
He
the king.
hired
He told someone
Hebrew
to do it.
scholars and Greek scholars.
Right. Okay.
They did not change anything.
How do you know?
Because I've studied the Hebrew Old Testament and the Greek New Testament.
Do you know Hebrew and Greek?
I had to learn Hebrew and Greek in seminary.
The way that they
And
taught,
I
the way
know
that they spoke it at
that the
time
Old
that was
Testament was
revealed.
written in Hebrew and the New Testament was written in Greek. Now, you raise a great question, which is, why should we trust Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John to give us accurate historical information? Hopefully you have some tests, sir, that you use to determine historical reliability. Myself, I've got 4 tests. I use them on Suetonius, Herodotus, U.S. history, Greek history, any history. Nothing sacred about my tests. Come up with your own. My 4 tests are internal consistency, meaning by that, are there contradictions within the text that point to massive confusion? When you read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you'll notice a tremendous internal consistency. No contradictions. Different perspectives? Yes. Second test, literary style. Once upon a time in the land of Nod, Wink and Blink and Nod took a boat ride. Obviously, that's fairy tale. It's not the literary style of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John use historical narrative, like a newspaper reportage, as literary style. Third test, archaeology. Are we talking about Jesus and the island of Atlantis? No. We're talking about archaeologically verifiable Bethlehem, Nazareth, Jerusalem, Rome, Sea of Galilee. Fourth test. Come on, man. 2,000 years ago, in the 1st century, these guys write these Gospels. Haven't you ever played telephone? You whisper a secret in the ear of the person next to you. They whisper it in the ear of the person next to them. Yes, I played that game. Yes, the secret's totally perverted. That is not how we have the Gospels handed down to us. Sir, the Gospels that we have today in English are based on over 5,200 Greek manuscripts, all agreeing to an infinitesimal degree. Sir, there is no document from antiquity that could even approach the New Testament Gospels in manuscript evidence. So the overwhelming evidence is the Gospels are accurate historically.
So he makes a great point about the historical accuracy of the Gospels. And that is basically what I base a lot of my faith on. Is I look at what is presented in the world today as far as evidence for creation of life. And I've looked at many theories. I just released the video prior to this was about abiogenesis. So the reason that Christianity and Jesus stick out so much to me is because there's so many corroborating stories, corroborating evidence of what Jesus did, said, the events that took place around him, and all of that is corroborated, not just in Christian texts. There's Jewish texts, there's Romans, there's that weren't Christians, that all corroborate this story. Now, if this story is corroborated, you can just say, oh, if anybody talks about a book and enough people say it is, then you could just say anything is. Yes, that technically that's true, but you got to remember when this was taking place and how much evidence there was for this. There's more evidence for Jesus's story and the events around Jesus than any other antique literature that has ever existed, and there has to be a reason for that. So the points he's making about his 4 tests, I think, are valid and confirm the evidence for Jesus, or the evidence for the story of Jesus. So he mentions archaeology. Every single place in the Bible confirmed. And there was, I forget the researcher or scientist or scholar who said that if you were just to look at the Bible as a source of geographical location, it is one of the most accurate pieces of literature in ancient times that depict the geography of the world. That alone is you can't just make a story up and then be so accurate on things. So when I read the New Testament and I started looking at it more as just historical narrative, like Cliff said, it's written as a historical narrative, not as a story, not as a poem, as many literature was written back then. It is written as historical narrative, which is not a common theme back for those times. Historical narrative was not a popular way of writing things. There would be no other reason to write that way unless you were telling a story that actually happened. And all of these things just reinforce the story of Jesus, and that is enough for me to believe that what Jesus was not only a real person, but his credibility was spot on and what he said must be true. So this was my first React video. I hope you enjoy it. I plan on doing more of these. There's a lot with Cliff that I love, and I just love watching his videos, and throwing them out here as React videos are, I think, going to be more fun than anything. So if you enjoy this content, please drop a follow, please leave a comment, leave a like. I truly support all of you, or appreciate all of you for the support you've been giving me. And I haven't been on my TikTok lives lately because I'm going through some internet issues, which should be fixed tomorrow, hopefully. So if you enjoyed this content, please leave a like, please leave a follow, leave a comment, and as always, bless you all, and I will see you on the next one.